it's my privilege to introduce him as your board of director member and as a client for him. John is the president and founder of Syntactic Sales Scripting. It is his mission to help other sales executives, entrepreneurs, salespeople, and to help create winning sales scripts that enable them close as many sales and sales every day. John's mandate is to demonstrate to individuals and groups how well-crafted sales scripts that are compelling and dynamic will maximize sales results. The results, more customer, more revenue, and an ever-growing business. John is an elite member of the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce of Orange County, and John is also a senior faculty member of the NLP Center of Atlanta. So John, the floor is yours.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Next slide, please, Geraldine. You have control, correct? All right.
I have control.
All right, this is my counterpart, Brigitta. I'll introduce her properly in a little bit. Next slide, please, Geraldine. So today we're talking about high-tech and high-touch video presentations, how to influence, persuade, and sell online, because you need both high-tech and high-touch for real influence. So let's jump right in and get started. Geraldine, next slide, please. Now, with a computer system, you need a software to interact successfully with the hardware. That's how high-tech works. But you also need to successfully interact from a high-touch perspective. How are you truly reaching the people on the other end of the line, whether it's on Zoom or another video format? That's why today I'm going to share you some both high-tech and high-touch strategies for real influence. Next slide, please. Let's look at the top here of this diagram. We have the collection of programming code. Let's chunk it down from the high-tech side on the left. We go from high-tech to video conferencing capability, to platforms like Zoom and others, to tools and techniques and software. High-tech is all about optimization. Now let's chunk it down from the high-touch side of things. We go from high-touch to neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, to models, to strategies, micro, macro, and meta. A strategy is a distinct series of steps or instructions to achieve a specific outcome. On the high-touch side of things, this is how human beings are hardwired for influence. Geraldine, next slide, please. Credibility is your currency, whether you're online or offline. So next slide. How do you establish your credibility? In the dictionary, credible has two definitions. One, worthy of confidence. Two, capability of being believed. Now, your credibility is even more important online than it is offline. There are many ways to establish your credibility. I'm going to share with you 2 ways you can do that today. So next slide, please. Now, one effective way to develop your credibility is with your content. There are deeper levels to your content to truly establish credibility. There's 4 layers. 1, you must have a solid structure. 2, a clear syntax. What that means is your presentation and your material flows smoothly from one topic to the next. 3rd, your content must be all meat, no fluff. And 4th, your material needs to be content-rich, hands-on, and actionable that people can implement immediately. So that's how you can develop credibility from your content. There's other ways to improve your credibility and build it. Who introduces you matters. Geraldine, Board of Directors of the Filipino Chamber of Commerce, introduced me. It matters. Another way to improve your credibility is what's called cross-edification. Next slide, Geraldine, please. So this is the cross-edification diagram for a physical room. I'm speaker number 1. I know people in our audience, so I have trust and rapport and credibility with people in my audience. I also know speaker number 2. I have credibility with speaker number 2. Thus, I can transfer some of my credibility that I have with my audience to my fellow speaker. Notice the two-way arrows. That is the transference of credibility from one speaker to the next. Speaker number 2 knows some other people in the audience. He or she has credibility and trust and rapport with them. From there, speaker number 2 can then transfer some of her credibility to me. Notice the two-way arrows. This is cross-edification in action. You can do this both online and offline. This example was offline. Geraldine, next slide, please. Brigitta Hoeferle is the CEO of the NLP Center of Atlanta. She teaches courses in neurolinguistic programming from the introductory level all the way up to mastery level. And Brigitta is best known as being the most fast-tracked female trainer for the biggest personal development company in the world. Notice, I just cross-edified Brigitta online. Next slide, please. Next, let's focus on representational systems. Representational systems are based off of the 5 senses. Now, there's something important about representational systems. There's what's called representational system primacy. What that means is the person will use one sense over the others to process information, to organize their experience. And representational system primacy affects personality traits and people's capabilities and preferred learning styles. So I've been talking a lot about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Let's give a good definition of it. Geraldine, next slide, please. NLP studies the patterns or programming created by the interaction between the brain, neuro, language, linguistic, and the body that produces both effective and ineffective behavior to better understand the process of human excellence, neuro-linguistic programming. Now let's pivot to the NLP language pattern, but the NLP communication model. Next slide, Geraldine, please. This is the NLP communication model. External event and information goes into the person. It's then filtered, deleted, and distorted. It leads to internal representations, emotional states, physiology, which impacts behavior. This is how human beings are hardwired. So if you're going to implement the effectiveness and you want real influence, you're going to use the NLP communication model for that high touch level of influence, which you can do effectively online. Next slide, Geraldine, please. Let's talk about word catalogs and language predicates. In NLP, language predicates are used to identify the person's primary representational system. Which rep system are they using? There's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. Now here's a high touch micro strategy for you. Use visual, auditory, and kinesthetic language predicates in your presentation. Why? 99% of your audience are VAK. Next slide, please. Let's go deeper into the importance of syntaxes. Now, I highlighted the syntaxes before, but they're even more important online. Your timetables are critical. People have very short attention spans, so we got to get the timetables correct. So if you're doing a free webinar, the timetable is 15 to 20 minutes. If it is a paid program, 60 minutes. And if it is a high-level, multi-day capstone type of course, each section of that capstone course is going to be 2 hours. That's the syntax that you have to follow when you're presenting online. People's attention spans are so much shorter, which means you have to be even more dialed in with your presentation, both high-tech and high-touch. Now, I said I'd share with you some additional resources. So here's some additional resources for you. Next slide. All right, Geraldine, next slide, please. We're offering a high-tech, high-touch webinar starting next week. Covers 2 weeks, August 25th, 26th, and 27th, and September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Each webinar is 15 to 20 minutes long. Highly concentrated, content-rich material. Next slide, please. Your investment is $0. It's free. Why? Because you're members of the Filipino American Chambers of Commerce, as well as honored guests. You are committed to the growth of your business. As a reward for that, we're offering you access to this webinar for free. Next slide. Now, if you're interested in attending this workshop that begins next week, the High Tech, High Touch, we're going to post in the chat box the Eventbrite link, so you can click on it and register.